Hey campers, I'm Miss Jenny. Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I would love to have a garden, but I can't. Maybe you don't have a lot of outdoor space at your house. Maybe your parents don't want you digging up a huge section of your yard, or maybe you don't just have a pile of wood lying around to build a really beautiful garden, or maybe you just don't know how. That's okay. You don't need any of that in order to have a garden. Today, I'm gonna show you how to take trash and turn it into a garden pot. That's right, trash. So get ready to go through your recycling or your trash can, because we're gonna make a garden. Before we choose a container to use as a garden pot, we need to know what our plants actually need to survive. We can't pick a pot that's gonna meet our plants' needs if we don't know what they are. So, what do plants need? First, every plant needs water to survive. So our container needs to be able to hold a little bit of water, but not too much water. So it needs to be sort of mostly waterproof. Second, every plant needs soil. So we need to make sure our container can hold soil and won't fall over if it's knocked or bumped. You also received some soil in your camp kit, so that's easy enough. The third thing every plant needs is air. There's air all around us, so that one won't be too hard. Fourth, plants need sun. Some plants like a lot of sun, some plants like just a little bit of sun. So you can check your own seeds that were included in your camp kit to see exactly how much sun your plant likes, and we'll talk more about that later. Finally, every plant needs space. They need room to grow, right? So some plants just need a tiny bit of space, like radishes. They only need about this much space to grow and be super healthy and perfect. Other plants, like maybe kale, need more space. They need about this much space to grow and be healthy. Watermelon plants need 6 feet of space in order to be healthy. That is wider than most adults are tall. So that means if the average grown-up laid down on the ground next to a watermelon plant, they would actually be about the same size or smaller than the watermelon plant. So we probably wouldn't want to use a tiny yogurt container to try to grow a watermelon plant, or it wouldn't have what it needs to survive. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about space later, because your seed packet has everything you need to know about that for your plant. So, knowing all the things our plant needs to survive, we can choose a garden container that we know will work for our plant if it has these 4 qualities. It's mostly waterproof. That means it's made of plastic, wood, or metal, because things like paper and cardboard kind of start to break down when they get wet. It's stable and won't fall over just sitting there or with a little bit of a bump or some wind. 3, it will hold water, but not too much water. That means it has a lot of holes in the bottom or the sides, drainage holes to let out the extra water, or you can poke holes in it. And 4, it's big enough for your plant. And again, we'll talk more about that later. Check your seed packet to find out how much space your plant needs. It's okay if you choose a container that's a little bit smaller than your plant likes, but don't do too much smaller or your plant won't grow big and healthy like we want it to. If you're planning to place your plant outside, choose the biggest container you can find. So you may have to move from your recycling and think more like a big reusable shopping bag, a bucket, or even a trash bag with holes poked in the side can work as a garden container. There's all kinds of things that I found in my recycling, like a yogurt container, a milk carton, and a few others. I even had this empty cat litter container lying around that would be great if I just poked some holes in the bottom. Now that we know what we're looking for, with an adult's help, you can go through your trash or recycling and choose the best container for your plant. So for my soy milk container, first I poked drainage holes in the bottom. I tried to make quite a few. It's better to have too much drainage than not enough. Of course, an adult should help with this part of the project. Typically, I would put something to help with drainage down in here so that my dirt doesn't fall out. Something like small rocks or marbles. Even crushed cans are excellent drainage, but I didn't have any of that, so I'm just using dirt, and you can do the same if you don't have those things available. Next, I cut
a big hole in the top to make space for my soil. I used bagged potting mix that I already had, filled it up, and then planted some green onions that I had saved from scraps from cooking. So I had just been growing these green onions in my window in some water for maybe a week and a half, and thought it would be nice to transplant them into some soil. For the can, I just punched holes in the bottom using a nail and a rock I found in my yard, and then filled it with soil and planted seeds. There's some important information found on every seed packet. Of course, it tells you the kinds of seeds you have, but there's a lot more information that you'll want to know. The first thing we'll want to pay attention to is how much sun our plant needs. This will either say sun, part shade, or shade. This plant needs sun, which means it needs 8 to 10 hours in full sunshine every single day. Part shade or part sun means somewhere between 3 and 6 hours in the sunlight per day. Shade means it doesn't need any sunlight directly on it, but it doesn't mean pitch black either. It's more like the spotty shade you would find under a tree. The next thing we want to pay attention to is something called planting depth. This can sometimes also be called seed depth. This just means how far in the soil your seeds want to be planted. On your planting guide, there's a guide so that you can use your finger to estimate. Usually, about half your fingernail is 1/4 inch or 1/4. Your whole fingernail is usually about 1/2 inch, and your first knuckle is about 1 inch. It's okay if this isn't exact, but some seeds like to be really deep in the ground and some like to be closer to the surface, so it's good to pay attention. These seeds like 1/2 inch to 1 inch, so I'll stick my finger in the dirt about to here. And then lastly, and maybe the most important when you're choosing a garden container, is seed spacing, also called thin to. Thinning is where you pull out extra plants. So if you plant a whole lot of seeds, they can't all grow their very best in that small of a space. So thinning means you would pull out the extras and only leave enough so that they have enough space to get big and healthy. So for these green beans, I would need 12 to 16 inches between each plant. That means if I want to grow one plant, I should have a container that's about 1 foot wide. It's okay if you don't have a container quite as big as this calls for, because seed packets usually tell you to give plants more space than they actually need. But you don't want to go too much smaller, or your plants won't get quite as big and healthy as you might want. The last thing that some seed packets have, but not all, is days to germination, also called days to emerge or days to sprout. My seeds actually don't have that information, so I would have to look it up on the internet. But that just means how long is it before my seeds pop up above the ground and I can see the plants. It's helpful to know that because some seeds pop up really quickly and some seeds take up to 2 weeks for them to pop up above the ground. So you might feel scared like your plants are dead, but really they may just be working hard underground and haven't germinated yet. If you forget any of the details about seed packets or caring for your plant as you go, all of this information is in your planting guide, so you can always check back and look. I hope you had fun making your little garden pot. Make sure you place it in a place that has enough sun for what your plant needs, and water when the soil feels dry.